I'm Dana Perino, and this is Perino on Politics. President Trump puts the pedal to the metal on his first day in office, signing over 200 executive orders, and there was a lot more. Joining me now is former Speaker of the House, Kevin McCarthy, and Kevin McCarthy was there, and this is Perino on Politics. Welcome, Kevin. This is the podcast where I call up my friends and say, what is going on? Brief me for the week. Usually do this on Mondays, but Inauguration fell on a Monday, so this is perfect to have you here today. We were talking as friends just about our experiences at Inauguration, and I said, wait, let's do this for the folks as they listen. Yeah. I typically have not really enjoyed going and covering them. Now, I say that because it's very difficult to get around. It's January, the third week in January. It's always going to be cold. And I would say that as a spectator, I love the pomp and circumstance. I had a lot of fun yesterday, though, because there were lots of different aspects. There's so much happening all at the same time. And the changes of taking the inauguration and moving it from outdoors to indoors. And you can tell us maybe a little bit, Kevin, about the logistics of how that has to happen. That was very difficult. And I would end with this before I turn it over to you for your observations. I thought that the military review that President Trump did after the inauguration in the visitor center there was spectacular. Yeah. And I thought it was such a special moment. And maybe we should just have this inside all the time so we can prepare for it, because I know what it took to get that visitor center done. And I know that you were a part of helping make that happen. It was worth the investment, in my opinion.
It was. The difficulty here is it is really cold. This is like my sixth inaugural attending. And people get excited. People come from all over. So there were a lot of hurt feelings because people traveled a long way. They were going to stand out there. But for people to understand, it was so bitterly cold. I mean, it's never been this cold outside of Ronald Reagan. People would have gotten sick, and people would have been really hurt, and it was chilly within there. But to be able to shift that inside and only have so many people and then do that Emancipation Proclamation room, that was very impressive because, they start building that platform. I mean, I've been part of that committee, and I remember we'd be putting in the first nails in the hammer, and I feel like it's in August or September. They start building and prepare for that, not knowing who's going to win. And remember, Ronald Reagan was the first president to get sworn in on the West Side. Like JFK, Lincoln, they were all on the East Side. Now, Reagan would always tease you and say he did that because he wanted to look towards California.
Yeah, I was going to say, I bet it was California.
But I think it was decided before he won the election in 1980. But logistically, to build that, to put the seats in, the performers, and even it doesn't come off perfectly, like Carrie Underwood. Who would think an orchestra couldn't perform?
What happened? You were in the room.
It was very awkward. We're sitting there. She nods over, let's go. And they have the orchestra in two places. And I don't understand why it couldn't go. What electrically could you not perform? And they performed that song at the end because I think they felt so bad. And she eventually was sitting there so awkward. She says, I'll just do it.
This is what I loved about that moment. So this is Carrie Underwood's moment when she is sitting there waiting, and it's awkward. And, the eyes of it's not just the nation. The eyes of the world are on you. And we're like, is she going to nail these notes? And the music doesn't play. It's awkward. And finally she's like, let's go. And no one will ever forget that national anthem because it was so special. And then she had all the people in attendance sang along with her, but you could still, her voice came through. So what was that like?
She said right before. There was one military walks up and he has a headset on and he goes up to talk to her and she says, I'll just sing it.
She's like, I'll do it live.
And nobody knows because everyone's staring there. And think about this. You've got both presidents. You're standing in between both presidents and both vice presidents. And you think you probably practiced it, right, with them in the room. And then boom. So she handled it perfectly. She said, sing along. It turned out wonderful. And think of this. That was probably the shortest speech I've ever heard Trump give.
Yeah, he gave a longer inauguration speech afterwards in the Emancipation Proclamation room.
And that was the overflow. That's where governors were and others. And so I think he felt like I need to give them something more, and is part of his crowd and from people who are outside. But the other thing people don't normally see, and I've done this a few times, after the president's sworn in, they escort the former president out to the steps over kind of on the Senate side. And they escort him all the way down, and they escort the VP into a car and drives away. Then they escort the last president, the helicopter, up and out. And it's an amazing moment you see. And lots of times then, that's when they have that, the military where he walked around him, they usually march across then, and the president's able to see them. So that was a full different experience. And I thought it turned out fabulous, because think of that small area and think about how long they've been training, and then they tell you 3 days ahead of time, no, we're doing something else.
Wow. Well, I thought America showed the world once again, we are awesome. And my husband, who's British by birth, American by choice, said, America does it very, very well. But what was it like in the room? Because President Trump was very clear about what he thought had gone wrong in the last 4 years. And it was interesting to think about Biden and Harris having to sit through what was a very mild version of a Trump rally in a way. And he didn't hold back, really.
No.
And so I couldn't see Biden and Harris. Could you?
Yes. Okay. So this is a little fact that you can use if you ever need it. 8 years ago, I was the very last person to walk out before President Trump. We were in the tunnel. I was majority leader. So I'm standing with him. I have this picture where we take this selfie, and I'm announced, and then he's announced. This time, I was the very first person announced, being a former speaker, into the room, which I thought was unique. So the seating is sitting right there. And, when you watch, and it is different because of it's smaller and they're coming around. I thought it was pretty tough for Kamala Harris to come out, and she's got to face the other ones, and she did not win. This is where I truly believe people don't quite understand. President Trump has already done this job, so he understands what's to do. But I think in a more positive perspective, he got out of the job and didn't follow it in the second term. Now, most people would want to do 2 terms in a row. I think he's better prepared that he's not, because you being and understand that when you're inside that White House, you kind of get enclosed, right? You can't get out. He got to get out for the last 4 years with the American public, right? He went when there was a train derailment. He would go there and talk to people. He had to campaign when all these other people were campaigning against him after already knowing the job. I think he's more in tune to what's happening in America right now. He knows what the job entails. And he knows he only has 1 term, so he's not going to waste any time. So that's what you saw yesterday, and that's what I was so impressed. What was it, less than a 30-minute speech? He didn't care who was sitting in the room. He had world leaders he knew was watching. He was very clear about where America was going. And then to turn right around and to have those executive orders. You know how much time it takes to write one, to research it? Not only did he have that ready, he had his entire cabinet.
Yeah.
And they had already done the meetings. I mean, he's so far prepared. What I was saying today on Squawk, I think he's going to be ahead of the House and the Senate. They're going to have a hard time keeping up with him, because you know how long that day is. And the First Lady looked gorgeous, and then they go into to the balls, and they have to go to so many of those. And you know how tiring that is, right?
Well, what I just heard from our White House reporters is that, yes, of course, they were all out very, very late last night, but they saw lights on in the residence of the White House at 5:30 a.m.
Yes.
So he's ready to go.
He doesn't sleep much, never has. But there was an interesting question Peter Doocy asked him, like, what did it feel like coming back into the Oval Office? And you could hear it in his voice, you could see it in his face. It felt good. It was like I'm back.
Yeah.
But it wasn't, I'm back, let's go around and take a picture. Let's get right to work.
Yeah. And he did. And then he took 60 minutes worth of questions. Let me ask you another thing, because you're from California. You know these tech titans. I assume you know all of them.
Yes.
And that was very different. And to me, they got pushed into the arms of the Republicans and Conservative Party because of what happened under the Biden administration. But also, when President Trump is an interesting branding, he's very good at marketing, obviously. And he said, we're entering a new golden age. We're entering it, okay?
Yes.
And that these people are a part of that. But it's not just the golden age in terms of all of us maybe being more prosperous. that America is going to be in the lead when it comes to technology, that we have to be in order to protect our own national security as well.
I think that was more of a symbol. And the one thing I know about President Trump, he picks where people sit. I remember when we did the convention at the White House, he called me and he said, I'm going to sit you up with my family. You know, you're going to take this seat. That was more a message to the rest of the world and probably to China and to Russia and everybody else, that we're going to lead in technology and we're with one voice. Everybody's together. So don't try to split. And what's very interesting, it was the Democrats who pushed those tech titans to the Republicans, and not to the Republicans, but really to more where President Trump, when it comes like the First Amendment. Like I've been friends with Elon for a long time, and that's really what drove him. He didn't sit out and say, I'm going to support President Trump. He got so frustrated once he bought Twitter, seeing what government had been doing. He never believed they could do that. And it really motivated him. And that was the opening for the others that it's okay to come on board. Mm-hmm. And when you watched all of them there, it wasn't a display. I didn't take it, but I thought it was very smart on the president's part. Is this is power, because technology will move the world. Every other world leader would love to have one of those companies in their country, right?
Absolutely, yes.
And lots of times the people will see, oh, Tim Cook is going to be jealous of another, or Bezos is going to be jealous of Elon.
They looked very cooperative.
They all sat together, shaking hands with one mission, listening to the president, where we're going in this golden age. What are we going to do? And it's a new America. And I thought that was very powerful.
Do you have any opinion on what happens with TikTok?
Okay, this is something you have to understand. It's passed into law, and it's been upheld by the Supreme Court. So something has to happen to TikTok. Either it's going to go away, or it's got 75 days to figure out how this modification will go. So there's something will happen. Because
do you like President Trump's suggestion, which I don't think it was anything put in stone. I think he was just saying, well, maybe America could have 50% and China could have 50%. I don't think that would work, but what do you think?
I don't think you could go 50-50. I think it has to be at least 51-49. But there are also other things has to change. Where's this data going to domicile, which the president was supportive of changing the time before? And this algorithm, okay, is it going to be open, or where's that going to be at? Who's going to see that? So I think those questions have to get answered in the next 75 days. But I think it going down for a day or 2 days made people realize, okay,
well,
this
but
is
also
serious.
I thought that was kind of terrible, because TikTok didn't have to do that. They did it because they wanted to make a point. And then they were like, oh, wait, no, let's put out a statement that says Donald Trump saved it. And
yeah,
I also was thinking about how people are very upset that the Chinese have been able to infiltrate our government systems at the FBI, at the Commerce Department, Department of Energy.
Janet Yellen's computer person.
Yeah, and then, but everyone's okay with the TikTok being in your phone. And look, I like TikTok. I like the app. I just think that it should just do what they want us to do, which is to divest it. And Kevin O'Leary, Mr. Wonderful, has a proposal to buy it. We saw him yesterday, and TikTok Kate said, are you going to save it? And he said, I'm working on it.
Now, I think a lot of them, and then you have McCord and the others, I think the real ones who are going to probably be in the world that I would trust the most to have it is like an Elon or an Oracle or somebody who's in the tech community in America. But this is a much deeper thing you've got to understand. Why is China gathering all this data on all of us, right? They're breaking into everything. Now, the reason they're doing it is because they're going to keep all this data, but they're waiting to have AI or quantum to really mine it, to be able to use it in the future. There's a lots of things they grab that they really can't use right now, but they're very smart at what they're doing, and it's very dangerous for America. That's why we need to be able to, and I'm looking and talking to the president about other executive orders, to make sure we got to knock China from getting into any more. They're right now, if you talk to the Biden administration, they're into all of our networks right now, and they don't know how to get them out of it. Well, how long have they been there, and why are they harvesting all this data and just they're mining it for the future? We've got to be able to block that, and we've got to be able to make sure we're ahead on compute and AI and quantum.
And so much to talk about with Kevin McCarthy, my guest on Perino on Politics. Let's take a quick break. We'll be right back. And we're back with Perino on Politics. Could we talk a little bit about how Joe Biden really oversaw the destruction of the Democratic Party. I mean, they are without a leader, without an agenda, without a message. These confirmation hearings are just really good for the Republicans and Donald Trump. They're just like walking all over the Democrats. The generational difference is also very noticeable. I mean, I don't know if the Biden team understands just how demoralized the Democrats are at this point. But maybe I'm wrong. Maybe I'm reading this wrong.
No, you are right, but it's also a lesson for Republicans too. Because remember what Biden walked into. He had a majority all the way around. And he's leaving, destroying it, but it's also the party was on a path to doing it. He embraced the Bernie Sanders model so he could win. They brought those people in. Then don't just blame all on Biden. Also put Nancy Pelosi in there of what her policies did and where they drove it. Now, Republicans right now, we have the majority, but President Trump performed much better in that election than the party did. The Republicans in the House, for the first time, lost seats. We won the last two cycles. This should have been an easier climate for us to win more seats, but we lost.
Why do you think that is?
I don't know exactly. I mean, I always go back to recruiting matters a lot. You got to put the resources behind it. You've got to have a very clear message. You got to tell the voters what they're going to do ahead of time. And the Senate did well, but also if you take the history of the Senate races, if you look before this in the last 70 Senate races, they always performed exactly the way they did for the presidential. Only one time didn't. In Maine, she won re-election even though it went against Trump. Well, Trump won Arizona. Trump won Wisconsin. Trump won Michigan, but we didn't win those, and won Nevada, but we didn't win those in the Senate race. So there's 4 seats we historically would say we would win. So we need to take a deep look at ourselves too. Why did we not win those seats when President Trump won those? So these voters are going to the president, not to the party.
And so part of that then is that the Congress needs to deliver on the agenda. And
100%.
Mike Johnson, the Speaker of the House, and John Thune, the leader of the Senate, they're going to go and visit Trump. We're recording this on Tuesday, January 21st. They're going to go visit President Trump today and try to lay this out. It is not going to be easy to get done the things that they want to do legislatively, given the margins, especially in the House. But
that's very true.
Tell me what you think about the challenges, but how they might overcome them.
Okay, so this you got to understand the lay of the land. You've got a president that's ready to go, and he's going to push him. He's going to be, and he's stronger politically than he's ever been, and he's going to be more than the president. He's going to be almost like the Speaker of the House because he can control the votes in the House better than anybody else. But for the first time in modern history, the majority in the Senate is larger than the House. So they're going to try to go a certain way. You've got to get the tax bill done. You have the ability for reconciliation. For your listeners to understand what that means is you can pass a bill without getting 60 votes in the Senate, but everybody leapfrogs over this. You can only do reconciliation if you both pass a budget that's the same. Don't underestimate how difficult that is because the majority just got smaller today because Mike Waltz resigned to go into the White House, and then you're going to have Elise Stefanik. So they're going to be two members shorter, and they're smaller, and the seats in Florida won't fill till April 1st, and then the New York seat, Elise's, won't fill till later. So even though you want the agenda higher, you're even smaller. But the Senate's going to be more than willing to go because they've got a bigger majority. So what that entails, but they also have this other roadblock. They never finished the funding from last year. So everything you want to do in the future, here you come March 14th, you've got to get the funding done for last year now, which was a total mistake. But you can't ignore that because that empowers the minority. And if the minority gets a big victory there, it can stumbles onto your next one. So every victory gains on the next. Get that stuff done ahead of time.
Wasn't it like 2 weeks ago that President Trump took a shot at you saying that the debt ceiling decision was a bad one? But then you explained to me why that wasn't quite right. And now I can't remember. Okay,
explain to him too. So he says, his staff gave him some wrong information.
Okay.
Because he thought I moved the debt ceiling from the end of September to May. Government funding goes to the end of September, not the debt ceiling.
Right.
So
okay.
I inherited the debt ceiling in January, the same time he is. And the debt ceiling is decided based upon how much money you have coming in and how much money going out. The Treasury decides that. I don't have any power over that. But we were able to cut $2.6 trillion. We were able to get welfare reform. And remember all those IRS agents that were already passed and signed into law? We've stopped all of those, more than $40 billion worth of that. So it's been pretty successful. So I think he realized that. But what the president doesn't want, he doesn't want to have to deal with the debt ceiling right now, because it does empower the minority party the way we were able to use it. So part of the argument would be, as you're doing this funding from last year, get the debt ceiling done too, so he can get. It's kind of like you're taking over a company that wasn't run well. You got to have some working capital, and now he's got these fires in California. You can't ignore it. You've got to help those poor people. So infuse some capital. You got Doge to save more money. He's got this new economic power that's going to bring in more capital. So just do the debt ceiling and the funding right off the bat and get that done.
What's your opinion about not having a debt ceiling at all?
The Democrats want to wipe that away. I think it's still a
dangerous,
very positive thing to have, because to me, our greatest threat, we think of China, is our debt.
Yeah.
And remember what Einstein said, there's only one miracle in this world, the time value of money, the compounding of interest. Well, the compounding of debt works the same way. And we have way overextended ourselves. So we need some type of roadblock that actually makes people think about, if we didn't have the debt ceiling under Biden, we were able to put in caps of how much they can spend. Now they want to spend a lot more. They need some restrictions, because there's nothing in government that says, come on, put those reins back in. You don't need to spend as much. And that's what brought us inflation. Let's
take another quick break, and we'll be right back. And we're back with Perino on Politics. And earlier today, Bill Hemmer asked me, did you see this? And I was like, I am going to have to figure out a way, in my own way, to keep up with all the news. It's impossible to see everything all the time in a Trump administration. It just is. In fact, I think I've developed like carpal tunnel in my hand over the years, and I've realized now I can't be on my phone all the time. So I'm trying to figure out, how am I going to keep up to speed? What's your method? How do you, what's the best way you keep up to speed?
I use Kronk on X, and I type in the morning a certain phrase, what are the items I should be reading this morning?
That works?
Oh, yeah. Kronk. Because it learns what I like, and when I phrase it the right way, it really. Remember the old days in politics where you had some young staffer clip all the.
Oh, that's why we call it the clips. We just explained this to TikTok Kate a couple weeks ago.
That was probably you and I starting out.
Yeah, but I used to cut the newspaper article out, paste it on the page, make a copy, fax it back. Yeah,
that's exactly what I did. Yeah. So in the modern era, you can do this. But the difference is we're going to have to get back in shape, because we're used to the Biden world of nothing happening.
Nothing.
If he did a press conference, that was for that 6 months. President Trump has done more in this 24 hours than he did in the last year.
Yeah.
So we forget about that, but you're going to have to keep up with pace. And this is where Congress and the Senate is going to have to keep up.
Oh, wait, can I ask you something else? I know this is usually where I ask people what I'm missing, and I'll get to that. But I also want to ask you about this. Mike Johnson, the Speaker of the House, did an interview with the Free Press in which he said that when he met privately with Biden, and he said, sir, why did you eliminate exports of liquid natural gas? And Biden said, oh, I didn't do that. It was just a study. He's like, no, sir, you did. He's like, no, I didn't. And Johnson said it was clear to him that Biden didn't know what he did. Was the staff running the place? And Biden didn't know what was happening?
Oh, yeah. I've been talking about this for a number of years. And if you remember, like more than a year and a half ago, they really came after me and attacked me hard, from Morning Joe to the Vice President Harris. Like, I was being totally... I've been with the president, and every time I was with Joe Biden, and I knew him well before, he was a different man, I realized early on. It was a different person each time. There was one time he was totally out of it, and took me on a wild tour down to the swimming pool in wintertime. And took us into the changing room, and I had no idea. I felt bad. I was trying to help the White House staff get him back in.
So then they did the pardons on the way out. I mean, Trump did the January 6th pardons as well.
How outrageous is this? Okay, so early on, here they go. They say the laptop's not true. They say they didn't have any Chinese money. All this stuff that Comer and Jim Jordan found, that whole family was tied together. They had how many LLCs? The brother, the son, pay the big guy. Why would you pardon your family? And there's a great clip where they asked the President Biden early on, is he going to look for a pardon himself? He goes, why? Well, why would I pardon any of us? And remember, this is the difference between he and Trump, and I don't think the press gives Trump credit for this. If you disagree with Trump pardoning the people from January 6th, he told you when he was running for president, I'm going to do this. I'm going to. So you could make the decision, I'm not going to vote for him because I disagree with this, okay? Joe Biden told you he would never pardon his son, okay? Then his son gets convicted, so then he says, oh, it's about drugs. No, it's about the gun and everything else. But why the brother? Why the sister now? Do you know something that we all believed was happening, but you were lying to us about?
Like the loans?
Yes. And, oh, yeah, because the loans you don't pay taxes on and you're hiding it. Oh, you run the money straight over across. I got $50,000.
Do you think that the Senate or that the Congress can investigate and find out afterwards? Like, is there...
Well, I would go back for all that they tried to demonize Comer. He's got a lot of information there.
Okay.
And these pardons vindicate him in his investigation. They really, really do. And you should really look at how he did. Now, a pardon's a pardon. I think they're totally off, but the public should really know. And if you were going to pardon your family, would you do it when Trump is being sworn in and they don't even know it's happening? How outrageous.
So I said this yesterday, but I was speculating, and I don't know the truth. Maybe you do. There were the pardons of a few people earlier on in the day that was, people with longer drug sentences, et cetera. But no family members, okay? And then I saw President Trump, I think, entered the rotunda around 11:41 a.m. or so. And I believe that the announcement of the family pardons was like 11:44, 11:45 a.m. And I don't think that President Trump knew about the family. Okay, because I don't think he would have resisted saying something, but they waited until he couldn't find out.
He would have turned. And I'm not sure where he signed those at, if he signed it in the car. I remember when President Trump won 8 years ago, there was a bill I passed about, and it was at the very beginning of Congress. And Obama literally signed it in the Senate minutes before he was no longer president, because it was a good bill, and he wanted to sign it, I guess. So I'm not sure if he didn't sign that down there, Biden. But remember what happens on this day. They had already met at the White House earlier in the day.
Yeah.
Because what happens, the current president and the incoming president meet, and some members are down there.
Have some hot tea.
Yeah. But if he had done this, somebody was holding the papers.
Yeah. Amazing.
And saying, and waited till, sir, he's walking out. Okay.
Do you have an opinion about the January 6th pardons that Trump did last night? You make a good point that he said he was going to do it, but do you have an opinion?
Look, he has the right to do it. He said he was going to do it. It wasn't a blanket pardon. Look, I disagree with what happened on that day. I was there. This was wrong. But a lot of those people were prosecuted. And this is where I looked to Jonathan Turley. He would really tell you the same thing.
Yeah.
The way they were prosecuted, the way they went after. And these people had pretty much already served their sentence away. And the president said he was going to do it. I respect that more than anything. He told you months in advance, this is what I'll do.
So a couple of years ago, I had a big birthday. And anyway, we go to Spain.
29?
Yeah, exactly. And we were with a bunch of friends. I'm with my girlfriend, Lauren, and we're walking with a guide. And it's a beautiful place, Cordoba. And I said, what's this place like at Christmas? Because, when you go on vacation, you plan your next vacation.
Yes.
And he said, oh, Christmas is kind of too commercialized. And that's like really, no, it's not really great. He goes, but our big day, our most amazing day is January 6th. And I go, yeah. We don't have January 6th in our country anymore. If we just go straight from the 5th to the 7th, we eliminated the 6th. And he's like, really? I'm like, yeah, it was just a decision we made as a country. And my girlfriend was kicking me in the shin. She's like, what are you doing? But part of me yesterday thought, okay, well, when I saw those family pardons come out, I thought, how are all the Democrats going to complain about this? I know that they will, but they can't also defend the Biden crime family pardons.
This is the other thing, too. Do you remember when President Trump and his team left 4 years ago? Mm-hmm. Everybody was blackballed. Nobody could get a job. They went and tried to prosecute everybody. They went after you for everything possibly. They tried to shame you. They told Republicans could no longer co-sponsor bills. They did it. And then he turned around and lied to the American public, let his son go off. Now the family. Yeah, President Trump has more than right to pardon all of them. But also, he told people ahead of time. Had he not, he still would have the right to do it.
All right, let me now ask you the final question, which is, what are you paying attention to that I might be missing?
Well, you never miss anything.
I don't know.
I never miss you on reading sports, so I know you're up to date on that, of where it's going.
Did your team win or lose last night?
I like Notre Dame.
Yeah, me too.
I'm Irish. Come on.
I know.
But they had an amazing year. They really, really did. The only thing, I don't think you're missing it. I think this is going to move rather rapidly. This whole part that the president's talking about, AI and quantum, but this is what you have to think about. Everyone thinks about that technology, and we have to gain that technology before the others. But we cannot get AI or quantum unless we have a new energy policy, because the grid has to double. And you can't put these data centers unless you have this facility where you're going to hit the peak. So if you really want to be able to capture that, you got to get the energy policy right. And this is the part that you could be missing, but you're too bright to miss it. When the president went in and signed those executive orders about energy, it does a number of things. Not only does it help us when it comes to AI, it hurts Russia's economy and China's economy. It curves inflation in America. It helps the American public have more cash. So what he's doing, he's setting a stage before he gets on the world stage to negotiate anything. And then when he starts talking about the tariffs, it's the negotiation of economics. He's putting America on a stronger economic position to negotiate today, but he's also setting the tone for the next century when we talk about this golden rule, that he's putting a layup for the next 20 or 30 years. If we get structured to dictates behavior. He's setting the structure for almost like an industrial revolution.
Yeah.
But this is a different type of revolution that you can't miss because it's going to go fast.
We've come to know Governor Doug Burgum of North Dakota. He'll be at the Interior Department, but he'll also be overseeing like a national energy redo.
Yep.
But do you know Chris Wright, who will be at Department of Energy?
Yes.
He seems like a great guy.
Yeah. I met him before when we were at ARC talk, and I ran into him the other night here. He's very smart.
Good.
But don't think of energy just as drill, baby, drill. This is permitting reform. This is redoing our grid.
I think that's what President Trump's going to announce tonight. So they said that in the 4 o'clock hour today, again, Tuesday, January 21st, he's going to make some big infrastructure announcement. I think it's going to be a permitting issue.
Well, it is.
And the reason why is just so everybody understands. Let's say that a project gets approved or gets announced. It takes years to get approved because of all the permitting, and they don't do it consecutively. They do it sequentially, so it could take years. It's one of the things actually even Biden complained about.
And you got to think differently too. This small nuclear is really the future too. And I think it was Meta was going to do a new data center in the Northeast, and they were going to try this. They had a nuclear facility there, but FERC stopped it. You don't realize all these other parts.
Oh my gosh, the FERC, the Federal Energy Regulatory Commission. Let's leave on this story. I, in 1995, took over as the press secretary for Congressman Dan Schaefer. He's since passed. He's from Colorado, and he was the subcommittee chairman of the Commerce Committee at the time under Chairman Bliley. Do you remember Chairman Bliley?
Oh, yeah.
And he was great. So
Virginia.
Chairman Schaefer was Subcommittee of Energy and Power. So that's how I kind of know a little bit about this issue. And my first press call ever was from a guy named Brian something. And he was from Energy Daily. It was a trade paper. And I've never had a press call in my life, okay? And he calls and he says, hey, yeah, I wanted to get the congressman's position on the FERC mega noper. And I was like, could you repeat? He says, the FERC mega noper? And I was so embarrassed. Kevin, I had to say, do you mind spelling that for me? And I wrote FERC, mega meaning big, noper. So basically it meant the Federal Energy Regulatory Commission, mega notice of proposed rulemaking. This is this permitting process we're talking about. It's been going on for way too long, and that's an embarrassing story. But if you're new to government and you're starting out as a staffer, my recommendation is have a piece of paper that you keep in your desk where you write down all the acronyms, because there's so many and you will get caught out.
But if Trump does this, and remember, Trump wanted to do infrastructure the first time he came in, and the leadership said, no, start with healthcare.
Yeah.
And he's always been frustrated by that, and because he's a builder. But if he gets this right, I mean, think about what he's doing with NASA. Because, look, the next war will start in space. And he's transforming NASA, and that the private space where we are today is so different. And that's also where those titans are all in too, right? And that advances us from other countries and also saves government. I mean, he is really looking at it a 360-degree angle, more playing chess. And if he gets the structure right, we're going to be in a great place to win overall.
So I've taken up way too much of your time. This usually is a 20-minute podcast, but it was well worth the time and investment. Thank you so much. Kevin McCarthy, former speaker. Let's stay in touch so I don't miss anything. And I'm going to try to go work on the XAI so I can find out what not to miss.
Yes.
Okay.
You got it.
All right.
Okay.
Have a good one. Listen ad-free with a Fox News Podcast Plus subscription on Apple Podcasts, and Amazon Prime members can listen to this show ad-free on the Amazon Music app.